So, Captain Doug in Thailand. I'm going to go through, I've got this Berkik 3 that I built. Really like the design, appreciate the designer in Indonesia. I forget his name right now. But I'm going to go through, I'm going to rebuild it. I'm going to put some carbon fiber or Kevlar to reinforce the leading edge on the nose because I really tore that up. But here we go through the glider. So here's my Berkik 3. And really enjoyed flying it. Once I got some, put some small washers in the nose to get the CG better. And then I recently added a flight controller, the NX2 is it? And experimenting with that. So what I mainly want to go over is I'm going to reinforce this nose. I've damaged it a lot. I've had to rebuild it a few times. I haven't like untaped the airplane, but I've re-glued the ribs. And this, I just did this morning. It really looks bad. Wrinkled the nose up. So I think it's time for a rebuild, and I want to go stronger this time. There you can see that little flight controller back in there. Not well, but NX2. I'm doing Fly Sky receiver and transmitter. 3S battery up there. There's my washers for some additional nose weight. I think they're about 3 grams each, and that's helped. But it still was pretty unstable, and like I say, I've done enough damage to it. It's probably going to fly well anyway, the way it is. There's my little throwing thing. I reinforced that. You can see I did a real hard landing and shoved that up through there. So this is mainly, so I'm going to put, I've got little wooden blocks, and my servos, I've torn the elevons off, partly off several times. Got 3 hinges across it. So I'm going to put a piece of thin plywood underneath that to hold the wood blocks to hold the servo, because I've glued and re-glued those. Make that a little stronger without adding a lot of weight to it. I've reinforced these, the push rods. You can see I've got a little bump of plywood under there, or balsa wood. And that's helped, so those don't pull out. I've pulled those out a couple times. Tore the motor off last week. Hit a light pole, spun it into the tree, and getting it down, I ended up tearing that motor loose. That wasn't a big deal, but I've got reinforced. I've got an extra layer of foam, 5mm foam in there to reattach that motor. That I don't know that I need to make it much stronger. It held until I tangled with the tree. So I've just now gotten kind of a bend in this wing joint for the outer wing, both sides. It's held up real well. This has been blown a lot, been crashed a lot. Had a lot of fun with it. So I'm going to rebuild it. Going to build a new center section out of foam again, and come in with. I think I'm going to do the Kevlar, because I've used carbon fiber a little bit on other projects, and I've got some good experience with fiberglass. And fiberglass would probably be adequate, but I just found out I've got a source for Kevlar sheets, thin Kevlar sheets, so I think I'm going to try that layup. People on YouTube are talking about this polycrystal, polysilene from Minwax to use as opposed to epoxy resin. And I don't think I can get that. Closest I've got, I'm going to go look today, is polyester varnish for floors and house wood projects. If I can find something similar, and they're water-based, so we're trying to get away from the toxic stuff. And of course I need to find something that won't eat up the foam if I use the foam as a foundation or as a template. So I'm going to start experimenting more. So I'm ready to go ahead and build up this center section. And of course this joint is right about here, I think. No, it's right at the end of this, where that spar is. I've literally, this morning before I flew, I tore out a section that had broke out again, and there's that outer spar. So, you know, it's no wonder it doesn't fly well at this stage, because I've got it all tore up. So what I'll do with those ribs, I'm not sure if I'll maybe make a double, full double foam rib. I could possibly lay fiberglass or carbon fiber between the sandwich it between. I'm just thinking out loud to get a stronger rib, especially up here in the nose where it's really going to take a beating and has taken a beating. So we'll see. Having fun experimenting with it. We'll continue to do. This is the first thing I built out of foam that got the tape wrap, and this is a little heavier tape. It has stuck well, but I'm trying to pay attention to weight too. These tapes are really thin, and this was a reasonably thin tape. This was thicker than I had hoped for, but maybe that's worked out all right, because it just hasn't pulled away for the most part. I took my time applying it and stuff, and so it's probably done an okay job. But I get it now, why you tape up the foam. Of course, the foam structure itself would take very little abuse. And this has taken a lot, and it really hasn't suffered much other than this, and this is just recent that I bashed this real bad. So if I stiffen this, the idea is to stiffen this center section up, especially the top front half of it. If I really want to watch my weight, you know, I would just do the front part of that, and then overlap into this mid wing, if you will, or second wing section. You know, come around the corners here with fiberglass or like I say, Kevlar, so that this much less likely to crumble and crunch and stuff like that. Anyway, we'll see what we do. So Captain Doug here again. I'm starting my disassembly or deconstruction of my Berkik 3 after numerous flights and a lot of crashing and stuff. It was real windy the other day, and I really beat her up pretty good. So my scale will only go to 500 grams, so I had to take the weight off. Here's the motor and ESC, battery of course. Here's my receiver and my flight controller, my NX3. This is my washers for getting the CG right, so washers up in the nose that I had, which helped it. So I pretty well stripped it out. What I'm going to do is build it up. I'm either going to build up foam as the original plan was, or original design was, and I'm either going to come in with some fiberglass cloth, or I might experiment with Kevlar to reinforce this nose area. Maybe even a balsa wood or thin plywood ribs on this meeting the center section, because those have been quite damaged too. So trying to stiffen up the midsection. There's my battery tray. You can see the damage to my ribs there. And I've re-glued those several times over the 6-9 months I've had this. I have torn the elevons off a couple times, so I'm looking to either better hinges or I might put a couple skids on the bottom to keep those up out of the dirt a little bit on landing, so they're not getting tugged on. Otherwise, I'm really happy with the airplane, and I've had a lot of fun. It's time consuming to build it. Of course, it'll be time consuming to build it out of a little reinforced, but I'm trying to make it a little more bulletproof. Okay, we'll follow along as this process goes. Okay, continuing this disassembly of my Berkik 3. I'm trying to analyze the damage, right? So that I know where to reinforce. This is broke here. This is really badly broken. The front's really smashed in. This is just pulling the tape back. So trying to determine if I need to make a plywood rib or reinforced fiberglass onto the foam for the ribs. Okay, we'll keep you abreast of this. Okay, kind of shot from behind. The getting this seam opened up. This seam was broken. I had a repair there that kind of held that in place, but I can see where this opened up. And this seam had, the tape was the only thing holding it together. That was broke, and this had pulled open. So again, you're really trying to analyze the damage, and I don't want to overbuild the thing to where I've got something that's really heavy. But I tell you this, you know, I just constantly had to pull the throttle back on this thing. I just wanted to climb it and go fast. So it's real light. So it's got, I think I've got room. I can add some weight if I have to either lay in some fiberglass or Kevlar. We'll see how that decision goes. Okay, we've got a lot of this Berkik disassembled. So here's the, you know, what I call the second wing, third wing, middle wing. So here's and this is basically a double rib, if you will. And that's all pulled loose. What I'm certainly recalling when I built this, it was hard to get enough glue gun. Most of this done with glue, hot glue. And it was hard to get everything, like this has got a forwards bar, back bar, leading edge, trailing edge. You can see down in there the ribs broke down in there. And this one has, this had popped apart. Get that wire out of the way. And you can see that rib is broken there and then broken loose. So it was tough to get enough hot glue going to get everything sealed up, all the seams made properly, and then get the thing together and tape together for some clamping. So that's the right wing. Left wing similar. You can see where this is all broken loose up in the nose. This nose took a beating. As I worked on the CG, I got too much weight up front. This about 4 months ago, and it took some really hard landings. I was able to kind of fix them out, but it had done some damage. And I knew that. The tape was, you know, largely was holding the airplane together. The leading edges, you can see that gap a little bit. Got gaps in that. So here's the center wing. My battery box took a beating. This is all broke loose. And I was trying to be careful how to take it apart so that I could see what had actually broken, what just wasn't ripping stuff apart. That's opened up. Same thing on this side. I made repairs. I ripped the motor mount out this last time. Actually got in a tree. This is my throw lug there. And on one of the worst crashes, that stuck down a little further and it shoved it up through. That's probably overkill. I probably won't make it quite such I won't go up through, but I did. And it takes up space in that bay for your electronics and stuff. So probably not going to do that. But when I went to repair it, I threw, you know, pieces of balsa and ply. And it's actually quite a bit stronger. It's not bad in that sense. It strengthens things out, but you lose that space. Anyway, there it is, part of the top that was left. This is not at all a criticism of this design. It's a really great design, really light airplane. These guys use them for FPV. I'm not into that yet, probably someday. And so keeping the airframe itself light is a real plus, and you can throw some more cameras and electronics and stuff in it. But like I say, I'm going to work on, I've ordered some Kevlar. I'm in Thailand, so it's hard to get stuff, but I got Kevlar coming and some regular fiberglass. Deciding to go with straight epoxy. I see some of these guys using a polyacrylic. May do that, and I suppose that's so it doesn't eat the foam too much. And I was able to get like 4-inch foam, insulation foam. So I may build the whole center section anyway up out of solid foam, and then carve out, once I've got my Kevlar glass laid, carve out room for the electronics and so forth. Or I may rebuild this using this 5mm and see if it gives a good enough foundation to lay fiberglass on or so forth. So again, with the goal of keeping it as light as possible. For my Berkik 3 rebuild, I made a new center section, but I made the ribs out of balsa wood, both sides. And then I used that, I transferred over, here's my big block that I'm going to make my new center section. Trace the lines over both sides. I haven't experimented with hot wire. I don't think I'm going to do that for here. It's simple enough, but maybe in the future for something. So I took my my wood saw and drew my lines and hacked out a piece. I'm headed to the hardware store to get some coarse sandpaper to start shaping this thing.